Hey guys, Andrew McComb here from Outlier TV. In this week's episode, I'm in beautiful Minakami, Japan, where I'm going to be speaking to Mike Harris, the founder of Canyons Japan. Alright guys, with a setting like this, I'm excited. Let's go and meet Mike. Mike Harris, welcome to Outlier.
Cheers man, good to see you.
Beautiful weather.
This is typical Minakami winter.
Mate, you're an outlier in all forms of the game. You're from an outlier place called Dunedin, New Zealand. You're 6 foot tall or over in Japan. You're a redhead and you've got dreadlocks doing canyoning and everything else outdoor adventure in Japan, mate. How did that all begin?
I guess it all really began in Dunedin. I started studying high school Japanese back in the day. I was really fascinated with Asian culture. Probably if we go back even before that, there was a show back in the day called Monkey Magic, and they really fascinated me. So I started looking at martial arts. I started a little bit of karate, and then high school, got into Japanese. We had this really great Japanese teacher, Mrs. Kawachi. And she really sparked all the students' interest, So started there, got onto university where I did Japanese as well, combined with a commerce degree, majoring in sort of business, accounting, and IT. And then after my first year of university, I had an opportunity through my university to do an exchange to Shizuoka Prefecture, where the home of Mount Fuji. And that was really the first step into Japan. So came here the first time in 1992 with a bunch of mates that were studying together, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. So this is every day was a challenge. You're in a different culture. You're learning the language. Even though I'd had sort of at that stage perhaps 6 years of language training, the official stuff you study at school and the colloquial language is quite different. So. Just every day was a great learning experience, and I was 19 in a new country, every day was amazing.
So that was initially for holiday, or that was for an exchange, or had you started working at that point?
That was just for an exchange. I was here for 3 months over uni holidays, and the university had a connection with the Lions Club over here, and they set up a job for us and a homestay for us. So I was working for 3 months in a gas stand with a bunch of my mates, and that in itself was a very different experience, because the service, a level of service over here is very different. A car rolls up and you all go racing out. Show must there, you're bowing, and that whole thing was was a fantastic learning experience. And then obviously having the homestay family, who I'm still connected with today, was fantastic. So yeah, it was just an amazing first experience. And at that time, I had these images of Japan being, Mount Fuji, beautiful temples, amazing technology, but I didn't really notice, you didn't really realize what amazing nature was here. And I had my first foray at that time up into a Japanese ski resort, and I was a pretty avid skier from being a young fella, and I went up and skied on the side of Mount Fuji, and I was like, wow, Japan's got snow, and this is in 92, before really Japan was known, I guess 98 was the Olympics when really Japan was put on the map for snow. So that was my first thought, I've got to go check out more of Japan. So went back to university, finished off my degrees, and that was the end of 94, and it's like, I want to go back to Japan, I've been studying Japanese and business, I love the place. So end of 94, head back, and I was working in Hakuba. And at that time, there was probably 5 or 6 other foreigners, non-Japanese, living in the town. It was still the end of the Japanese ski boom. I'm on this massive mountain, where they had part of the 98 Olympics. And every day it's like, powder paradise, I was like, wow, just living the life, So, and it was a bit of a dream of mine as a kid, sort of to live on a ski resort. Yeah. So I'd walk outside, I'd walk, literally 100 meters up, the road was the gondola, scam a ticket. In other words, I'd ask people who are coming back down the mountain and say, can I receive your I'm a poor sort of worker on here, not getting paid much, can I get your ticket? And then just go riding for 4 or 5 hours a day and help out in this lodge at night. So dream job.
So initially Hakuba, beautiful place. Obviously it's busier these days with a lot more international tourists.
That it is.
And then you eventually, how did you come to Minakami?
Yeah, so I was skiing one day up at Happo, the main mountain at Hakuba, and I sort of prided myself that I was quite fast. I was sort of like an amateur racer, so I had these pretty long race skis and stuff like this. And one day I pulled up at the top of this run. It's where they actually had the Olympic downhill, and a guy pulled up beside me, and we both had the same race skis. He had all his gear on, his hat and his goggles and stuff like that. Couldn't tell. We sort of just looking at each other, looking at the run, and this impromptu race just ensued. It's like boom, we're just going flying down, and we got to the bottom. We both pulled up at the same time and pulled off my goggles. He pulled off his goggles. He's like, oh, it's a foreigner. He's like, I go, hey bro. He goes, oh, hey bro. And it was this Kiwi dude.
Yeah.
And his name was Chance, and he was quite a famous groomer back in the day. He used to groom for like the Olympic courses and things like this from Methven. And he told me in the conversation we had a few runs together up the lift. He goes, a mate of mine's just started the first rafting company in Japan in a place called Minakami. It's like, oh, Minakami, sounds awesome. So that was the one and only time I've ever met Chance, but because of Chance, a guy called Chance tells you about
How
something.
about that, eh?
He told me about Minakami, but I had this sort of, I guess, this dream that I'd love to go try live in Tokyo. Big lights, bright city, bright lights, big city, sort of thing. Small town Dunedin boy. I want to go try it out. So then in the spring, April of that, in 1995, I came down to Tokyo. And I was there for a few weeks, living the life, going out partying all the time. And I was like, this is cool, but it's not really me. I've just come from the Japanese mountains. I really love that. And at one night, it was probably 3 a.m, I had this epiphany. It's like, yeah, Chance told me about this thing. I've got to go check that out. So I rang up JTB and said, look, I couldn't remember the name of the company. I said, can you tell me the name of all the rafting companies in Japan? They said, well, they only know of 1 or 2 in Japan. And they said one of them was Great Outdoors. I said, that's the one. And I got the phone number. I rang up this guy. I said, mate, I'm in Japan. I've got a working holiday visa for the year. I've done rafting and lots of outdoor stuff as a kid. I speak Japanese. He goes, come up. So next day, took the slow train up. Over the next few days, I went out and did a few days of rafting with him. I just fell in love. I was like, this is amazing. The first trip down the river, I think we flipped 3 times, had these gnarly swims in grade 4, and I came out going, wow, that's incredible. So I said to him, look, I want to train up to be a professional guide. And, my experience in New Zealand was just scouts and sort of, doing river trips and playing in rivers all the time. So he said, yeah, man, I'm keen to get people on board, It was only him and another mate of his used to come up on weekends to help out. So I trained up under him, and he brought over a bunch of really experienced, like the legends of rafting and kayaking in New Zealand to help out. So I had 3 or 4 of these legends from New Zealand training me up in Japan. So that was how I got to Minakami, yeah.
Fantastic. And your educational background was, what did you study at uni?
Yeah, so I did, at Otago I studied accounting, but over the years it was broad sort of commerce degree, so a bit of management, bit of marketing. I minored in IT and majored in accounting, but at the time they didn't have Japanese as an option at Otago, so I studied extramurally through Massey University, right. And Massey was the one that set up the exchange. Yeah.
And so you've got that as a background, and you've now got your rafting expertise growing.
Yeah.
Did you then go and work for these guys, Great Outdoors, or did you then?
Yeah, so I obviously rafting's a seasonal thing. You don't not really be rafting in the snow. So over the Japan summer season, I worked rafting. Then off season, I went back to New Zealand, went up to Rotorua, did a bit of rafting there.
Yeah.
Came back to Japan, did another summer. After that summer, I went to Australia. I went up to Cairns, and at that time it was the Japan boom. There was busloads of Japanese tourists every day. So, there was a couple of companies there. They're both full on every day. I walked in and I said, look, I'm a rafting guide. I'm looking for a job. And they said, no, we're full. We've got guides from all around the world want to work. And I said, I speak Japanese. They said, can you start tomorrow? So I started training. It's a very different river from the river we work on. The Tali River is a very technical river.
Yeah.
So I started training there, and a couple of weeks later, became commercial. So I did the season there, and then back to Japan. So always sort of doing back-to-back summers. The old endless summer gig. And after that, I went to Nepal. I did, and the Nepal season's slightly different. It's sort of you have a sort of September to December season, and then sort of a late February, March to sort of June season. In the middle of summer, they have big rain monsoon. So I was doing the spring and the fall seasons over the autumn seasons over there with a Japan summer in between. And it was when I was over there, I got invited to come up and go canyoning, and there was a bunch of European canyoning guides who were setting up the first canyons in Nepal, and I was doing multi-day trips, but in between I'd have a few days off, and I was at these mountain resorts, and they had all this gear. They're like, "Oh, you look strong, so can you help us carry all this gear up?" So I was carrying all the bolts and all the gear and stuff up with them, and started going down and helping them, rig up these courses, bolting and sort of all this stuff. I was like, "Man, this is really cool."
Yeah.
And I thought, there's a lot of these canyons around Minakami, because on my days off I'd gone sort of scouting around the mountains up here. It's like, this would be a really cool thing to start in Japan, because the Tone River, our main river for rafting, it's an epic river in spring.
That's the one below us here?
This is actually a tributary. This is the Yubiso. This just downstream here, it flows into the Tone. So in the spring, it's a continuous grade 4 river, amazing sections. But in the summer, the water drops. They try and save the water for Tokyo's drinking water, so they don't release as much. So I was thinking, what adventure could I create in the summer? And when I met up with canyoning, I was like, wow, this could be it. So in '98, when I came back, I started up a little canyoning operation within a company that I'd actually switched to, a company called Uncle Bear. A Japanese guy asked me to come over and manage his company.
Yeah.
So I did. I went and managed his rafting company, and I started bringing in all my rafting mates that I've met around the world. And at the same time, I said, look, I'm going to start this little canyoning operation. So that's going to be my own sort of part of something, So I started that out, and it just sort of snowballed, yeah.
So when did you take the plunge to doing your own thing with Canyons Japan?
Yeah, I guess, '98 was sort of the year that I started out as my own small little business, sole proprietor. And just year by year, within Uncle Bear, it's the canyoning side of things in the summer especially just started to get more and more popular. And after a few years of just things growing, it's like, wow, I've sort of outgrown this operation and this base. So I went and said to the owner of the company, said, look, I've built up your raft company from a 2-boat to a 10-boat company. I've created this canyon thing, and I really want to sort of just go out and give it a good nudge. And he said, yeah, I totally understand. I support the decision. So I went out and changed to my own location, which was like a little shack sort of place up in the mountains that me and the boys just sort of chucked together, that was actually owned by my wife's family, Bill Land. Just started really going hard at the canyoning side of things, and we just focused on just canyoning. I'd sort of had a little bit of a guts full of rafting by that stage, because there was a lot more operators coming on the scene, and a lot of them were sort of doing a substandard sort of product, and their safety standards weren't quite there. And coming from New Zealand and the New Zealand system, where it's the safety standards are very high and high level of quality, I guess I just got a little bit disillusioned with the whole thing. So I want to go out and make something that's world class and start again.
And not being restricted by the current operating systems.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's where that was another part of the decision. And around that time, around 2000, I had my first kid. So it was like, wow, it's a good motivating factor. You got kid on the way. It's like, bang, I have to get out there and make a good living and sort of provide for the family. So
how were you concerned at that point? Like, was there a bit of fear that came up because you got that pressure?
I mean, definitely. I mean, I'd had a pretty easy transition, really, because I got to test out this product within a company I was managing. To see, is this going to work? And I had a really good sort of feeling about the industry, and pretty good knowledge about the industry, and sort of with working in lots of different places over a number of years. So I had a good feeling that it was going to work, but there's always that sort of thing in the back of my mind. While I'm loaning this amount of money from my family, or from my wife's family to make this happen at Better Work, There's always that little bit of fear, but you just got to back yourself, If you see that you got the vision and you can see, I think this is going to work. You just got to take the step, take the plunge.
It's easier said than done, though, isn't it? When at the time there's a lot of emotion going on behind it, and I guess the next step for you. So you go to Canyons Japan, and obviously where it's at now. How is it now compared to where it was?
Well, it's a very, very different beast these days. We started off just focusing on canyoning, and we really grew that over a number of years. We're just focusing on the canyoning thing, but a lot of our guides came from a rafting background, and we were doing packages where we were doing the canyoning, sending the rafting customers to other operators, but they weren't providing the quality that we really wanted. And we're like, all right, we're going to jump back into the rafting as well, just so we can provide this amazing experience, So we jumped back into that, and then a lot of our staff were like, hey, we'd really like to work for winter as well. We want year-round employment. And at that stage, there was no one in Japan really doing the year-round employment. It's very seasonal work. You employ people for the summer and then let them defend themselves in the winter. But it's like, well, one of the reasons I started this is working around as a guide. You get to a certain age and you're like, all right, I'm getting to around 30. Am I going to get a real job, or I'm going to stick in this industry? And I really wanted to create a company that could keep these really amazing people in the industry for a lot longer, for maybe lifetime employment. So it was like, part of that is, okay, we've got to do something in the winter. So we started up the winter business, started off doing things like snowshoe tours, and then from that started doing the ski lessons. And that was before any of the inbound boom. This is sort of like 18 years ago, early 2000s, before all the Hakuba boom and the Nisaku boom and all this kind of thing. But there was a need for international expats and stuff in Tokyo to have lessons for the kids. So we started doing it on a small scale like that. And sort of things just grew. So that side of the business, the snow side of the business, just organically was growing. The summer was organically growing. We started to add locations and do all sorts of things on that side, franchises and stuff like that. And then the third...
In different locations
around Japan, yeah. I had lots of mates at that stage who were running rafting companies, so it's like, all right, well, I'll set up a canyoning business with you in your location, you know.
How'd that go?
Yeah, I think it was a good idea, but I don't think we were ready system-wise for the franchise. I feel we couldn't maybe provide enough ongoing value for those franchises. They got a lot of value out of the initial training, the setup, all the equipment and stuff, the course setup and stuff that we did, but it was hard to provide that really good ongoing maybe value in sales. So because they're mates of mine in the end, it's like, okay guys, I'm just going to, you take the company, you guys just run with that. I don't want to argue and have any sort of, we're mates first, so you take that and we'll just pull back and you guys can run that. And if you do need help, let us know. So that was a good learning experience, it was too early for us to jump into that franchise thing where you didn't have the systems in place. If we were to do that now, it would be different,
So you've gone from summer to winter, you've gone from rafting to canyoning, you're added the snowshoes, the skiing, the snowboarding. What else do you do?
Yeah, I guess the other big thing that we added, the Japanese are very seasonal. So middle of July to sort of, the end of August is summer, and that's when you go and play in the water. You go canyoning, you go to the beach, you go rafting, you do these sorts of things. But the shoulder seasons are very quiet because the Japanese are so seasonal. So we'd built up a little bit of international sort of clientele, some that were expats in Tokyo, some from overseas, but it wasn't quite enough. So we had a international school teacher approach us who had came up as a customer and said, hey, I'd love to bring my kids up here. So it's like, wow, there's a market for this. And, I guess coming from New Zealand, as kids, we had this sort of outdoor education, these sort of opportunities. So it's like, let's try to create some programs for these schools. So we started off just giving them pretty much a standard sort of rafting or a canyoning product or something like that, just getting them out there and giving them some fun. And that's sort of evolved over the years into proper outdoor education programs with proper educational sort of outcomes, and soft and hard skill learning and stuff like that. So that's really one of the big parts of our business now, that I see moving forward is going to be huge for us. And on a personal level, it's something that I really love doing. It's you just get so much out of working with kids.
Yeah, we're making a difference there, aren't you?
Yeah. It's when you see the kids' faces at the start of the week, and then their faces at the end of the week, and what they're saying to you, the feedback, the review you're getting, it's like, wow, these people, it's been a transformational journey. It sounds a little bit cliched, but it truly is, and as a guide or a facilitator or instructor, just to know that you've been a part of that process, it feels amazing, So the kids get a lot out of it, but we get a lot out of doing that as well. So yeah, really love it.
Well, it's interesting. On paper, it looks like you're going canyoning or rafting or whatever, but like you say, is actually because it's outdoors and it's, I guess, I wouldn't say risky, but it's challenging. It's putting people out of their comfort zone. Yeah. And then by default, they're creating a transformation over the period that they're with you. Yeah,
especially I think the expedition style trips that we do, which could be multi-day hiking. Where at the start the guides are very hands-on, and you're teaching them about things, and then you're trying to facilitate the learning, and by the end of it, they're guiding themselves as a team, and we're not even there. We're not seeing. We're just shadowing them to make sure that everything's safe, and just how much they get out of that. Is by the last day, that's like leaders appear, and a lot of the time these people are leaders that aren't maybe leaders within the normal school space, or maybe they're not the smartest kid or the most popular kid, but they find their element within the outdoors, and it's like the teacher's like, wow, this is just amazing what's happened here. So yeah, for me that's really cool, and it's still a work in progress. We've been doing it now for, I guess, about 18 years, but we're still always learning ourselves, and how can we make these things better. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 18 years of education. And I was down in Tokyo the other day, and I was in a meeting talking about setting up a summer camp and some outdoor education, and one of the ladies on the other side said, I went with you guys when I was a kid. When I was 12 years old, I went up there, and it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life, and I still remember it to this day. So to have these these people that you've really affected on a really core level, come to do that, it makes you really feel like, oh, you're making a difference in the world, So yeah, I really enjoy that part of the job, and even on the normal tours every day, we try to add elements of that. The normal tours for normal customers. It's about getting people out of their comfort zone and getting them to try something they haven't done before, and they feel a real sense of accomplishment at the end of that. So, our company motto is, refresh the world through outdoor adventure experiences, and that's, refreshing those people. They come from maybe an urban environment where every day they're sort of the grind, and they get out, you put them into nature, and you have this connection with nature, you have this connection with yourself, with other people, this amazing sort of fun experience. Life's about having fun. You've got to have fun sometimes, and then you learn stuff about yourself, you learn stuff about nature, other cultures, other things. So that's what we say is refresh. So we really believe that in all the things we do, and you can see that in all our staff and the way they react and act with customers and clients and our community as well. Yeah.
And speaking of staff, you originated by yourself. You've now got how many staff?
Yeah, it's grown. It's got about 150 staff now, and it changes throughout the year. In winter, it's about 150 because we have so many, sort of ski school locations now. And in the summer, we've kept it at about 50. In sort of two main locations. So we do a lot of tours all around Japan. We take Japanese clients overseas as well, but our main thing is sort of our base here in Minakami and our base in Okutama, which is just out of Tokyo. About 50 to 60 in summer, depending on the year.
So, mate, from being a sole trader to a large company, let's be honest, how's that transition been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a learning process, and you make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes over the time, and I guess the one that hurts the most is you start business with your friends, and maybe you have fallings out and stuff like that, and you never intend for that to happen, and you just have maybe differences in where you want to be or what you want to be doing, and I guess for me, money isn't a high priority for me, and then maybe for some of the other business partners, money is a bigger priority, things like that. So yeah, you have things like that happen along the way, and obviously with you running it with a mate, 2 people and things like that, you're doing a bit of everything, but as things grow, you've got to be delegating and getting systems in place and management, get management skills and all these other sort of people skills, which I think we grew at a reasonably organically, it wasn't exponential slow rate. So there was a bit of time to do that. But you can't do it by yourself. It's all about the people you put around you, and then learning. Just continual learning. So even today, I'm always reading books, going to seminars, sort of doing stuff online, podcasts, and then talking with other people who have got more experience. Continue that learning process. Yeah.
So how important is self-reflection when it comes to that? Because you're going through journeys yourself. It's kind of like canyoning, I guess. You start at the bottom on the level 1, and you move up to level 30 or whatever you've got.
Yeah.
How do you self-reflect on that process as you're going? Is it a natural process, or how does that work for you?
I guess originally that was probably one of my weaker points. I was just like, let's go forward, go forward, but without maybe reviewing things enough. But, a couple of other of our staff were really good at, wait a minute, let's have a little bit of look what's going on here. And, so I sort of learned to sort of go through that review process a little bit more and take things into account and say, okay, how is this for the different stakeholders? What's the situation now with our staff? What's the situation with our community? What's the situation with our customers? What's the situation with our environment? And put some real sort of measurements into place and sort of some feedback systems into place to sort of get some a good sort of snapshot of where we are. And then it's like, okay, well, where do we need to move forward? And that strategic process.
So as far as yourself personally, what do you think your flow is in relation to running a business?
I guess I really, like adventure tourism, I really enjoy the challenge. And, adventure tourism has different challenges. Running a business has different challenges. And running a business in a different country has even more challenges, I guess. So I enjoy those challenges, For me, I think the thing I like the most is going out and developing new products. A lot of entrepreneurs, I guess, reasonably creative. So going out there and seeing an opportunity and then putting it together and seeing that evolve. I probably like that more than I like the internal sort of side of the business. Even though with an accounting sort of business background, I think my strengths are sort of going out and developing stuff, seeing the opportunities and doing new things, So, which, I think as an entrepreneur or as a businessman, you've got to realise what are your weaker points and sort of maybe bring other people in that maybe have those strengths to try and to create a better team. Yeah.
So would you say you're working more on the business these days than in it?
Yeah, definitely. I've just over the last couple of years I've been bringing in some other people, outsourcing some things, last year brought in a COO. So the idea is, to have a lot of the internal stuff done by the COO, and that's something that I'm probably not as good at, that I've sort of identified. And for me, working more in business development and things outside the business, and I guess I've created a lot of relationships and connections and got a pretty good strong network in Japan at lots of different levels now. So it makes sense that I sort of utilise those networks and go and sort of spend more time on sort of developing different ideas, and that's probably my forte anyway. So yeah.
So in relation to those networks, like you were new to Minakami, brand new.
Yeah.
You've been here 18, 20 years now. You've got family, 3 kids.
Yep.
I guess Minakami in its own right, I've been here for 24 hours and it's a real outlier for me, and it's just where we are.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be as much as it maybe is, but it appears to be that.
Yeah.
How well were you received when you first arrived?
Yeah, I guess when I first arrived here I was 21, young, dumb, whatever. But I guess I was a little bit oblivious to some of the things that were the attitude going around me, because I was just having so much fun. But there was definitely some signs, like we're rafting down the river and there was rocks being thrown at us. The local fishermen didn't like what we were doing. It's like, what are you guys doing? This is our river.
Yeah.
A lot of the locals are looking at us saying, what are you guys doing? That is dangerous. So there was definitely a bit of anti-adventure tourism at the start. But there was a few key people that sort of championed the support for us, and they were the bed and breakfast owners, smaller accommodations. The large hotels, they were used to the mass tourism, massive numbers and things like this. They saw us small operators with a couple of boats that can only handle a few people. But that's not tourism. We actually went to the tourism association, said we'd like to join. They said no, that's not tourism what you guys do. So there was definitely a lack of understanding.
Because what was the main tourism here before?
Hot spring tourism, So in the 80s, over the bubble, especially large companies would bring up all of their staff, 300, 500 staff, going to these massive hotels, and they'd have a big piss up at night, and
get on in the bar,
enjoy and drink, sing karaoke and drink and jump in baths, and that was their idea of tourism, and that's what filled up all the demand around all these sort of hot spring areas in Japan.
Yeah.
But at the end of the 90s, through the start of the end of the 80s, start of the 90s, the bubble burst, so those glory days are over. So that tourism was on a steep decline, and that was when adventure tourism came into Minakami. But the large operators, the large hotels they had this idea of glory days. It's going to come back again. No, it's not disappearing. They didn't want to believe it. But the smaller operators said, we can see the potential in this. And some of them have been overseas. They've been to Cairns, they've been to New Zealand, and some of them have done some adventure stuff. So they saw, actually, what you guys are saying makes sense. So they started to support us, advertise, say, hey, come and stay at our accommodation and go rafting, do packages with us, help us out with local connections. Oh, we want to put the rafts into the river here. All right, I'll go talk to the landowner or find out who that is for you. So those guys were really the key, so those local connections at the start. And then as things progressed, we started to hang out with a few of the younger crew around town. There was the CNMBU is sort of like the Young Businessmen's Association, or the Young People's Association, and started to do some things with helping them out with some of the festivals. And then one of the turning points of it was they said, hey, we want to do something where we raft from Minakami all the way to Tokyo, to Tokyo Bay. And we said, yeah, that's possible, So a bunch of the outdoor companies, by that stage there was probably 5 outdoor rafting companies in town, got together and we said, well, we can do this with you guys, So we started training for them for rafting, in Minakami, and they're like, this is actually really cool, because none of them have never been rafting in their own town. And we did this 5-day journey down to Tokyo with them, and every night you're sitting around the fire, drinking, talking about Minakami, talking about stuff. They got to know us, we got to know them, and they said, these guys are awesome. They really are thinking about the future of our town, So that was a turning point, and as those guys were sort of the sons of key business owners in town, they had a lot of influence of, as a lot of areas in Japan, a lot of the things are controlled by all the older generation.
Yeah.
But they were saying that, hey, look, these guys are awesome. Let's support them. So that was a big turning point. And now all of those guys are in the city offices, and all these key roles. So, that was after that. It was like, okay, now we can join the tourism association. Okay, there's all these doors started to open. So yeah, that was going out and drinking with these guys and having this epic journey with them was really the turning point.
So back in that time where you weren't really accepted to now the turning point you are, feeling part of the community, how do you, like for someone who's starting in business, that could be pretty daunting. They could pull the pin pretty quick on that, couldn't they?
Yeah. I guess the thing was I had this vision, I had this sort of, when I first came to Minakami, it felt like this is sort of like Queenstown, it's like this has potential to be something awesome. And because I had this vision and I said, this is where I want to go, this is where the town should be going, I guess there's a word in Japanese, ganko, it's pretty hard-headed, I'm just like, other people are going to say, no, you can't do this, you're going to get shot down here and here, but I'm just like, I'm going this way,
Yeah.
And people have a shot at you and stuff like this, but they sort of bounce off because I was like, no, this is where we need to go, So I just keep on finding the way, there'll be sort of lots of, blocks in the way. Some people are going to tell you that it can't be done, or whatever. But just keep on moving forward. It's like I can see this is what needs to be done. So it's just like go for it.
Have you always been like that, or only since it came to canyons?
Good question. I didn't realise I was gunko, hard-headed, but possibly from back in the day. I know that from a kid, I used to go out and do all sorts of stuff. It's like pick flowers in the neighbour's garden and go sell them up the road to another. When I was like 6 years old, starting off doing businesses, set up little car wash businesses and things like this. I set up a lot of parties. I remember in Dunedin back in the day, I convinced the local head of the Catholic Church to give me the hall because I was going to do a church event, and brought in a whole lot of a big sound system and charged people $10 to come in. So I guess I always had these ideas. It's like, let's try this, let's go out and do this, and then people would always tell me, oh no, you can't do this because of this and this. I said, well, let's find a way to make that happen,
So it's not going to happen, it's how can we make it happen.
Exactly. It's always the question.
Yeah. So you became more part of the Minakami community, and obviously it is a beautiful spot to come, isn't it, other than for the onsen, the hot pools, the outdoor adventure. What else can you do here?
Yeah, I guess those are the main things, I guess the big theme for Minakami is water, The actual original Japanese characters for Minakami mean the water from above, because it's always been the water source for Tokyo. 70% of Tokyo's drinking water comes from up here. It's full of these amazing rivers, the Tone River, the second largest river in Japan, all these beautiful waterways, canyons and things like this, 5 massive lakes up in Upper Minakami. So the outdoor adventure, is the big thing. It's probably got the largest menu of activities in Japan. The rafting, the canyoning, the hiking, the mountain biking, paragliding, lake canoeing, pack rafting, river boarding. There's just this huge menu of things to do. There's 2 national parks here, Joshinetsu National Park, second largest in Japan, and Ose, the highest marshlands in Japan. So the natural assets are just incredible.
How many ski resorts are here?
There's 9 ski resorts, so a lot of them are quite a bit smaller, but the quality of snow is really incredible. Everyone knows about Hakuba and Hokkaido, but actually it's actually probably better in a lot of senses right here.
There seems a lot of history here too, and a lot of culture and hospitality as well.
Definitely. I mean, this was back in the, going back sort of 500-600 years, this village was here, This was sort of one of the old routes to travel over the pass to Niigata. It was called Echigo back in the day. So, and that's a part of the attraction of living in a place like this. It's got such a deep history. Just up the road from where I live, there's some ruins of a village that was there 3,500 years ago.
Wow.
When the pyramids were being built, there were people living here, So especially coming from New Zealand, where, there's sort of only like a 600 to 800 year history of humans inhabiting the country. It's like, whoa, there's such a rich culture. So for me, that's, something that's really cool. Sometimes I'm out exploring in the mountains and I'll find an old road marker or something from hundreds of years ago that no one actually knew about, and it's like, wow, check this out, So yeah, the exploration up here is, it's really cool.
And obviously you have become more part of the community, not only family-wise, but you're now part of the tourism body themselves. They've accepted you and you're now the head.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm sort of a director of the Tourism Association. I'm helping them out with inbound, I guess. Tourism's always a double-edged sword, If you bring in too many tourists, it can lose that feel, that authenticity. So for me, it's about bringing in the right target markets, the right type of people who really appreciate culture and nature. It's not just about going down and getting drunk in town, which other areas of Japan sort of have maybe lost a little bit of that authenticity because of that. So we're trying to grow it in a nice organic manner, and we don't want to have 100 times more customers. We've got a target and we're slowly moving towards that. So yeah.
So just on that authenticity, how important is that in business? And like, have you seen some other operators come and go because they're, playing a short game, or how's it been?
Yeah, I think, authenticity is everything. I mean, your customers can feel that, So if your staff aren't being authentic, your customers can see right through it, And for the community as well, they can see if you're actually walking the walk as well, So I think those things, sort of the quality of the product you're putting out there, sort of how you involve the community and work with the community, and then how you look after the environment that you're working in are really key things. And I'm lucky, I think, sort of having experience in New Zealand, and New Zealand's one of the leaders in the world for sustainable tourism. There's a lot of other places now that are doing great, but having those values of mana ki tanga, kaitea ki tanga, the way that New Zealand's really sort of that's filtrated right through the industry in New Zealand. There's a lot of things we can learn from that. And in Japan, I mean, especially the international industry, tourism industry is quite young. They only started the Ministry of Tourism like 15 years ago. The universities only sort of really been bringing in sort of tourism courses over the last 10, 15 years as well. So in a way, Japan's still in the infancy in the tourism thing. Even though they're creating some great results at the moment, they have to be really careful that they do play the long-term game. And by that, you mentioned other operators. There are a lot of other operators who were here 15 years ago but aren't here now because they're just in it for short-term games, And you can see they're just in it for the money,
Yeah.
So for me, of course, you have to think about money, but that's not the reason you do things, So Japan's at a real sort of crossroads at the moment, in terms of regulations and how they're going to move forward with tourism. For example, for adventure tourism in Japan, there's no legislation or regulation around adventure tourism. So you could go out and start a rafting company tomorrow, or what's been happening, a lot of overseas guides are coming over and doing backcountry tours or powder tours, and a lot of them aren't qualified.
Dangerous, huh?
Yeah, and there's been fatalities, there's been accidents, there's been things going on. So Japan realises that there's a problem now, and I'm working with central government at the moment to create some solutions around this. So
that is an interesting point. So maintaining your integrity has really raised your profile and your reputation, not just locally, but nationally and internationally, hasn't it?
Yeah, I guess I've been sort of saying the same thing, sort of the same message for the last 20 plus years. I've been in Japan at 25, so I've been saying the same thing the whole time. So I guess I felt a long time ago I was banging my head against the brick wall, but if you bang against that brick wall long enough, sometimes you're going to make a hole in it, and then that hole becomes bigger. So finally now, the message has fallen upon the right ears, and there's actually been action happening. So I can see a little light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And for Japan, it's really important that they do create that sustainable model, and they play the long-term game, because everyone overseas has this image of Japan being very safe, high quality, all the products they create, amazing service, and that's true for some of the products here, and especially in tourism, but for others there's a large gap, So I guess what's been happening, especially in the adventure tourism industry, is a lot of operators have been coming and flooding the market because there's no barriers to entry. You don't have to any safety standards, no regulations there. And all they do is they come in and they dump the prices lower, and then other people come and say they dump the prices lower than that. So it's this downward spiral, and people in the market perhaps don't know, especially these days with OTAs, online travel agents, just pushing out, everyone's awesome, and it's hard to differentiate what else in. So the buying power of, in the market with those OTAs and things has really changed the game a little bit. And even though there's reviews and things like that, a lot of customers don't know if this is a safe or if this is not, So there really needs to be some things put into place, and the government's actually working on that now. So better late than never. Yeah.
And how do you find, you've got your own business, very successful business in a beautiful place, but you're now working on the whole country as far as a consultant to provide growth in the outdoor adventure throughout the whole country.
Yeah.
How do you separate the two?
Well, I think they sort of, it's sort of helps reinforce the Canyons brand. You know, if I'm out there as sort of a brand ambassador, I guess, sort of going out, I do a lot of work with the Ministry of Environment over here, going around and I guess assessing different rural areas and different operators and giving them feedback about how they can become a more sustainable business and get up to that sort of world-class level, especially when there's a lot more sort of international people coming in. They really need to get to that level. So for me, I think it helps the Canyons brand. It's like, well, you guys are the leaders in the industry because you're going out and you're sharing that knowledge now. You know, and that's, you know, our company vision is to become the leader become the world leader in the outdoor adventure industry, and we start off with doing that in Japan, you know, and it's something I get a lot of enjoyment out of, helping other people to become better, because if the whole level of the industry goes up, it's better for the country, it's better for everyone.
Well, they say a rising tide floats all boats, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So you must get to meet some pretty powerful people.
Just yesterday, I was at an event with the Minister of Tourism, and I've had lunch with him a few times and done things. And you know, it's good that they're going out and listening, saying, "Hey, we don't know everything. How do we get to the next step? What do we need to do?" So, you know, the wheels turn pretty slowly sometimes, but eventually it's like, oh, what I said at that lunch 2 years ago, there's been action put on that now, and now it's working. So, yeah. I've got quite a few good connections now within especially central government, at the industry level, around all areas of Japan, and I guess Japan's done a lot for me, so it's time for me to give back a little bit as well. So yeah.
So how important are relationships when you look back historically on your journey from here when you first started to now, and now where that's evolving to, for an entrepreneur or outlier that's out there looking to grow?
Yeah.
How important is that?
I mean, relationships are everything, really. You know, you don't want to burn any bridges. You know, you want to try and do right by everyone. And, you know, I've made mistakes, you know, especially with mates and doing business with things in the past, which is one of my biggest regrets. But, you know, really trying to, you know, you can't keep everyone happy all of the time, but if you can keep most of the people happy, and I think, as you said, one of the key words is that integrity, sort of stick to your guns, and this is what I'm about, and that's been your core values, shouldn't really change over that time, you know. So I think if you can do that and keep those relationships, they'll come back to you later on. Those people that you treated right, you know, 10, 15 years ago, those kids you took out on those adventures, you know, later on down the track, somewhere that's going to come back, you know. I guess I sort of believe a little bit in that sort of karma effect, you know. You do good things and good things come back around. So, you know, I don't know if it's good that I've been in Japan long and become slightly Buddhist, but you know, I think that's that translates across all countries, you know.
Yeah. And Canyons is a large company. It's growing. It's got many things that you're operating and doing, and new products coming on, etc. What other businesses have you started throughout the years? Yeah,
I guess last year was a big year for new things. We brought in a COO here, so you know, a lot of the internal stuff has been sort of managed by him now. So it gave me a lot more free time, and at the same time, I've got 3 kids, but my oldest son is now rafting in New Zealand, and my 2 other kids are at boarding school in Nelson. So when the kids go away, it's like empty nesters. It's like, whoa, we've got all this extra time, you know, not running to sports events and doing all this kind of stuff. So because of those 2 things, it's like there was a lot of things I had in mind, and especially over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been travelling around Japan, especially with the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Tourism, seeing all these rural areas, and I guess it made me aware of a lot of opportunities out there, in terms of there's a need for this and there's no one really fulfilling that need. So last year I went out and started out a luxury travel company, so focused on luxury adventure travel. So taking high-end clients around to lesser known parts of Japan, but with more of a adventure focus. Definitely adding some cultural elements in, but more active, you know, cycling, hiking, rafting, things like this, sea kayaking, surfing, other ways to see Japan, you know. And part of part of that was my business partner was from New Zealand, and he has a lot of contacts in the luxury business because he worked in the helicopter business for quite a long time. So he used to live in Japan. We worked for Tourism New Zealand, so we got together and it's like he was thinking the same thing at the same time. So it's like the timing is now, Japan inbound tourism is going up. It seemed like the right idea. So I started that last year. At the same time, one of my mates from a long time, he was the owner and editor of a magazine called Outdoor Japan, which is pushing adventure tourism and Japan adventure travel to the world and to the expats living in Japan. And he said, look, I'm sort of looking at wanting to step up my game and all this, wanted to bring a couple of people on board. I said, I'm interested, You've got a great platform to tell the stories, you know.
Yeah.
So out of all these locations I was going to, I was like, how do I bring more customers to this little rural town? Because no one knows about it. Use this platform for it. And where do they book? They can book through this agency. Yeah. It doesn't have to be us, but they can book through this agency to show people this amazing place. And then I guess, so I had the Outdoor Japan bought into that, had the travel agency called Kodo, which means a Kodo is a pathway, so an ancient pathway. So new perspectives on ancient pathways, had the media to push this out. And then as I was going around talking with the Ministry of Environment, they were saying, hey, we thought, what do you think could be done here? And it might be in a small town where there wasn't really any accommodation, or there wasn't any nice accommodation. So it's like camping in Japan, glamping is starting to get big around the world. So it's like, I think glamping would be awesome in this location. But 3 years ago, I didn't know enough about glamping. So I started going around, traveling around the world, going to glamping sites. And I said, I want to start up a glamping location. So I looked around all these manufacturers, and I found the second biggest glamping manufacturer in the world, a place called Luxtenten, Dutch company, and I said, right, I'll bring some of these over and I'll test it out. I'll learn myself about what glamping's about, so I can give these places some knowledge, some expertise about it. So I started up a glamping location, and then I said, well, why don't I just become the importer, for Japan? Started doing that. So now we're setting up a site at Mount Fuji. We've got a few sites going here, and there's a bunch of other people who are interested in
So you've got the sites and the equipment you're bringing in too.
Exactly. So most of the time we run our own site here, but that's more for us to learn about the ins and outs of all this, so we can give better advice to our clients. But a lot of the other time we'll be selling them the gear, all the equipment, the tents, giving them some advice on how to set up, how to run the operation and things like that. So set that company up with another mate of mine who's a builder, Berkey, another guy from Dunedin, and he's been working construction over here as his own construction company and building luxury and high-end homes. But he was wanting a change as well. So we're working on that at the moment, and that's starting to take off as well. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you're also a DJ, I believe.
I guess I dabble a little bit in the old DJing. I started playing music about 23, 24 years ago in Japan. I was going out to parties and stuff, and sometimes the music sucked. So
Speaking of parties, mate, how's this? Confetti.
Yeah. I was like, sometimes the music sucks. So there's the only thing I can do about it is, I guess, learn it myself. So there was actually a guy in town who's a local butcher. And he's also a techno DJ. He has this pretty epic techno studio here, recording studio. So I started to learn from him, and then we started to do events together. And it was a good way for the staff to party, let off some steam and party. And then that built up, and me and him and another guy started up a series of events here where we're started off small, it was just the local guys, maybe 30, 40, 50 people. By about year 5, we were getting 600 to 800, sometimes over 1,000 people sometimes every month, bringing in international artists, and that became a lot of work, so that became a lot of work. But I really enjoy music, even to this day I collect a lot of music. I still play a few gigs in Tokyo, do a few gigs up here, and music's a large part of my life. Not professional anymore, but just still love the scene.
So a lot of variety, but it all seems to integrate perfectly to what you're doing. Do you find that a lot of entrepreneurs try to get ahead of themselves too quickly and branch out and do too many things too quick?
Yeah, and I guess I probably did that as well, with the franchise thing, and you got a bit too excited, and I think I guess one of the things is you have this image and you can see how everything works in your mind, but maybe that you can't really translate that so that all the staff can understand that, or the people following you can understand that, or keep up with you, because you start one thing, it gets going, and then you go jump onto the next thing, and so I guess a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, are guilty of that, and it's just sort of the way you are. But I guess after a while, you've got to learn to keep it at a pace where everyone can sort of keep up, and sort of the team feels like, okay, we've got this,
Yeah. So what advice have you got for the entrepreneurs who's starting out? Like you're working for someone else, you decided you want to do your own thing. What's the top 5 things they could focus on from the start?
Well, I guess, I mean, it is important to have a really, really good product, really know who your market is, and say, this product is just going to be bomber for these guys. It's going to solve those problems. And then I think one of the big things is you just got to really back yourself, unless you go out there and do it. Yeah, it might fall flat, but you're never going to know unless you do it, Sometimes it's about timing. You might be too early, might be too late, but I think you just got to get out there and give it a shot sometimes. And if it doesn't work, then you'll learn something from it anyway, Yeah. And then I think sort of getting in good people depends on. I don't even know if it depends on the industry. For tourism, it's hugely important, but for any industry, it's getting the right people in, and especially at the start, getting a really good core crew that sort of can really sort of that share that vision with you. So. And then I think at the start, definitely it's really talking a lot about the expectations, how are things going to grow, what's going to happen in 5 years, what do you want out of this, what do we all want out of this, having those conversations, what happens if someone leaves, having those hard conversations at the start is really important as well. So
pre-planning potential challenges and stuff, and how to mitigate them before they happen. Yeah,
definitely, because things happen, and especially if you're starting things up with mates, talking as much about stuff at the start, and what happens if this happens? What if someone dies? What happens if you want to leave the business at this stage? What are your expectations? How much do you want to be earning from this business in this many years? Do you want to be in the business or out of it? All these sort of things and scenarios are good to talk about, one of the reasons we do it is to have fun and to love the challenge of it. So it's got to be keeping that spark, keeping that passion. And I think having open conversations with the people you're working with and making sure that have we still got that passion, have we still got that spark, is it still where we're going, Having those sort of conversations and being really frank and honest with each other is important.
Have you still got the passion?
It's definitely still got the passion, I think one of the things for me is adventure tourism. It's going out myself and having adventures. So, I've been going out and doing some expeditions and things like that push the boundaries for me as well, to remember what it feels like to have that feeling of, am I going to come out of here alive, so far so good. But, and then, for me, it's also about this community, and it's about all these people around me. Sort of, I want this to succeed for all of this as well. It's not just for me, it's not just for my family, it's for everyone around me that's involved in this as well.
Well, it's a good point. You've become bigger than yourself, haven't you? In many forms. Canyons itself, and then on a global or internet or national, then global scale, make a difference.
Yeah, definitely, and it's...
Did you ever think that was going to happen at the start?
You have these aspirations, but, maybe you don't think, I don't think I'll be sitting in here having lunch with the Ministry of Tourism and asking me about what they should do. So it's definitely come a long way. And but as I said, if you stick to your guns, you've got that integrity. Keep at it. It's things don't happen overnight. This is going to be awesome. It's going to happen in 2 years. We're going to get to there, but it's not always the way it happens. Sometimes it's a bit of the grind. But keep at it, and if you do something for long enough, you become an expert. Or if you study long enough, you work harder, you become an expert, and good things can come from that.
So when you go through challenges, how do you personally overcome them?
Yeah, I guess I'm a pretty sort of positive. The glass is way over half full. There's a whole lot left you can put in the glass. So I'm very, very positive about things, and I think for me, a lot of it's about keeping to keep that positivity, you've got to keep physically fit, eat well, sort of all these other things, just to be the best version of yourself. Because if you're the leader, you're the one that everyone looks up to. If you're the guy, gloom and doom, that's the end of everything, So I think yourself, you've got to just be the best version of yourself. So looking after yourself is a big part of it.
And so that sounds like a personal support structure, right? So health and well-being, food, good sleep, I guess, and good people around you. Yeah,
definitely. Surround yourself with good people. Continue that learning process. And, Rugby World Cup last year, I probably had quite a few too many beers and got on a slippery slope there for a while. But, it's just kicking back in. It's like, okay, we need to get back on track. We need to get things done, So self-checks,
So what about the future? What's the next 20 years hold for canyons and Japan tourism?
I think it's going to be a really exciting time, Obviously Japan, last year Rugby World Cup, this year Olympics, Masters Games coming up, Japan's sort of on everyone's lips around the world. It's the destination everyone wants to. There's a lot of support coming from the government, so there's going to be a lot more rural development going on in Japan. I think it's going to become more and more international, which is going to create a lot of challenges because it's been such a homogenous society for so long. But it's also going to create a lot of opportunities for international businesses to move into Japan and do things here as well. A lot of investment opportunities. So it's going to be a really exciting time over the next 20 years of a lot of cool things happening that I can see. There's for Japan in general. For canyons, there's lots of ideas on the table at the moment, and we're looking, trying out testing the market, testing different things out, and I can see some fun times ahead and some interesting challenges ahead at the same time. So, I'm looking forward to the next 20 years.
Will you ever move back to New Zealand?
It's a hard call. I mean, I love New Zealand. Every time I go home, I drive around the country. I said, this place is absolutely incredible, but they don't have snow like this. So for me, being a skier, loving the mountains, loving the snow, and loving the challenge of running a business in a different environment, I think Japan's going to be my home.
Well, Mike, thanks for coming on the show, mate. You're officially an outlier, and it's time to go and have a sake.
Cheers, man.
Well, there it is, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this inspiring Outlier TV episode with Mike Harris. For more videos, resources and information, visit outlier.tv or connect with us on our social media pages below. I'm Andrew McComb, and here's to living the outlier life outside of the comfort zone. I'll see you soon.